Hello and welcome to this impromptu upload. Now, the quality may be a little bit different than what you're used to on the channels because I'm actually filming on a camcorder that I got for free from my course. Yeah, this is basically what I'm filming on. It's a Toshiba Camilio H30. Does film in 1080p, which is what I'm doing right now. Though and I might need to mess with white balancing and stuff, as well as this tripod is getting ever so let me know what you think of it. Now, obviously, the sound quality isn't too bad, but I'm obviously going to be using my headset here to record the audio off to the side, just so that it does sound that bit better. So I'll probably will invest in a better, not a better mic, because this mic is actually pretty good, as you can hear, but like a different one that I could just have plugged in, and so that I'm not constantly having to wear a headset. But this video is literally just as a test run to see how well this is going to look overall. Because I think it doesn't look too bad. Now I didn't mess a bit with the white balance because this is a bit of a darker room, even though I do have the ring light turned on. But anyway, that's not what you're here for. I've been rambling for 2 minutes. You're going to want to know what this video is, obviously, because you clicked on the title and the thumbnail. I am going to be ranking all 15 Star Trek movies. But you're probably thinking, hold on, there's 14 Star Trek movies. Only a key few of you might have clocked what I'm doing, which is a little sneaky sneak. But yeah, this is inspired by Cypher Sigma Screen Time, who was the first one to do this. Then, of course, Matt over at Matt V's Movies done his list, and then AJ done his list. So it only makes sense that after I watched and commented on their lists, that I should do my own list, because I did do a ranking for these 2 years ago when I reviewed all of them, all the Star Trek movies, up until that point, because obviously since then we had this Section 31 film. Now, so with that being said, let's dive in to this. So what is number 15? So I think number 15 has to go to Star Trek Insurrection. Simply because it's mainly just a movie form of a episode of the show. Even when I rewatched it 2 years ago for the channel, after not only watching it the once, it's not great. There's a reason why in nearly everyone's list you'll see Insurrection when they're ranking Star Trek movies down at the very bottom. So that's why I decided to opt for Insurrection as number 15. So number 14 is one that I don't own physically yet, and that is the Section 31 movie. Now, I personally did enjoy this movie when it came out. I really did. But yeah, like I said, I did enjoy it. And I know not a lot of people did. But at the same time, it has its issues. I still enjoyed it. It has its issues, and that is simply because it was originally supposed to be a TV series, not a movie. But because of how prominent Michelle Yeoh has gotten, it was filmed just shortly after she got her Oscar win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. So obviously they couldn't lock her down for a multiple season show. So it had to be turned into a movie. And yeah, like I said, I still enjoy it, but personally, it had to be number 14. So, number 13 is going to go to The Final Frontier. Now, I've only watched this twice. The first time I didn't like it. The second time I liked it that bit more. But still, like comparing this movie to all the other Trek movies that we have on this list, it's lacking. There are better Star Trek movies out there. Now, don't get me wrong, there are bits of this movie that I really enjoy. Of course, the campfire scene is one of the more notable exceptions of this. Even though William Shatner really got over his head, and the only reason he got to do this was because Leonard Nimoy got to film this, the third and fourth film, I think it was. But yeah, not Insurrection, The Final Frontier, or The Final Shit Tier, is my number 13 pick. So at number 12, I'm going to have to give it to Star Trek Nemesis. Now, this was the very first Star Trek film I ever seen. Way before I was a Star Trek fan. I was 4 at the time. And when this came out, I remember my mother dragging me to go see it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't know what a Star Trek was, and I didn't care for a Star Trek. And I do remember actually after seeing it in cinema that my mom asked me, "Oh, so what did you think of that?" And yeah, it took a while. It took a while for me to become the Trekkie that I am today. But yeah, I still like, I do like it, but there are definitely scenes that shouldn't have been in there. And this was written or directed by someone who wasn't even a fan of the franchise. But that's not knocking that person because, J.J. Abrams wasn't a fan of the franchise, and yet he still turned out two really good movies. But yeah, I'm going to have to put this as my number 12. So, number 11 is going to go to Star Trek Into Darkness. Now, when I did my review for this, which was to be fair, it was a long review because I was explaining certain key aspects that this movie neglected when they're doing their stuff, and that is, how Khan became looking like Benedict Cumbersnatch, and it was explained in cartoons, or not cartoons, a comic that because Khan Singh was so well known that, of course, they had to put him through facial reconstruction surgery so people wouldn't know. And that was all Section 31 type of stuff. Back before Section 31 became overused in Star Trek, for better or for worse. But a lot of people say that this is a Wrath of Khan remake, and that only happens towards the end of the film, where it's more of a Space Seed remake than anything else. That's just that's the feeling that I got when I last rewatched Into Darkness. Now, don't get me wrong, I still enjoy it. It was the second Star Trek film I ever seen in cinema. I've only seen four Star Trek films in cinema. Nemesis was the first one, then Beyond, Into Darkness, then Beyond, and then the 40th anniversary re-release of The Search for Spock. So yeah, Into Darkness is my number 11. So we're now in the top 10, and this is where things are going to get slightly easier for me to pinpoint. So I am going to go for my number 10 as I move some things off to the side here. My number 10 is Star Trek 2009. I really enjoyed this film. I watched this film not long after getting into Star Trek. I think I've mentioned a few times on the channel now where I got into Star Trek through watching some of the DVDs that my mother had at the time, starting off with The Voyage Home, then The Final Shit Tier, then Generations, then First Contact. Those were all that she had at the time. And then, of course, when this came out, she bought it on DVD, and I watched it, and I love it. And I still do every time I rewatch it. It is a solid film. Yes, it does change the timeline and yada, yada, yada. And Kirk's not like Kirk like he is in the original series, yada, yada, yada. But I still enjoy it. I still enjoy it. And J.J. Abrams did a really good job on this. It's just a shame what he did to Star Wars. But yeah, that is my number 10 pick. So then my number 9 pick is going to go to the motion picture. It's a good movie. Despite what everyone says, it's a good movie because that it was something that was always being said when I was growing up as a Star Trek fan, that the odd number Star Trek films were the worst. And I made a video talking about that last year or the year before, which I hard disagree on. I think all Star Trek movies are good in their own merit. Art is subjective. It just depends on what way you want to go. Like I know in Matt's list, Matt had the motion picture up very high on his list. Now, don't get me wrong, it is still high in my list at number 9, but I there are other Trek movies that I think are that bit better. And that's probably just an age thing, to be honest. So moving on then to number 8. So number 8, I am going to give it to Star Trek Generations. This was the first Star Trek Next Generation film that I had seen. I wasn't all too familiar with the Next Gen cast because, again, as I said, that's how I started off. I started with the movies, and then I just watched whatever I could on the Sci-Fi Channel. When they started showing Next Gen and Voyager. after I got into Star Trek, and I do enjoy it. As a passing of the torch moment. Even though we already had a passing of the torch moment in A Counter at Farpoint, with McCoy being on the Enterprise D in the end of the first half of Encounter at Farpoint. But this is your quote unquote passing of the torch moment. We finally get to see the Enterprise B because we knew of the 1701, the A, the C, and the D, and so we finally got to see the B, and then of course the D gets destroyed, which is so fucking stupid. I don't know why they opted to destroy it in its debut movie. Could have given it another shot, but then again, it had to make way for the Sovereign class, which is an absolute amazing ship. So number 7 is going to be that cheeky little one that I'm sneaking in to make it the 15 best ranking of my 15 favorite Star Trek films, because at a Star Trek convention this was rated highly as a lot of people's favorite Star Trek film, and a lot of people count it as a Star Trek film, and that is Galaxy Quest. I watched this for the very first time last year, and I fell in love with it. I think it's an absolute amazing film, and it is a love letter to Star Trek because it originally started off as a Star Trek movie, but due to licensing, it became its own thing. But I'm still going to count it as a Star Trek film, and I love it. The cast are absolutely amazing, including Sigourney Weaver. Alan Rickman is also absolutely amazing in this. May he rest in peace. And so many other amazing people who are in this are make it as enjoyable of a watch as is. And Tim Allen as a William Shatner clone, not bad, not bad. You know. So then we get into number 6, and my number 6 pick is going to be Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country. I do enjoy this film. It is a very good, strong end for the original series crew, and this was another one that my mother had. I completely forgot. Yeah, she had this as well. So this was one that I watched. I watched 4, 5, and 6, and then it took me a while to watch 1, 2, and 3. And then the same with Insurrection and Nemesis. It took me a while to see those when I got into Star Trek. But anyway, I absolutely do love this film. I love the swan song that it is for the Enterprise A and the original series crew that I grew to love. I prefer the original series crew in the movies over the TV series of the original series. I know that's probably controversial to say, but that's just my opinion. I prefer them in this over the original series, and I do love the original series. So yeah, Undiscovered Country is my number 6 pick. My number 5 is going to surprise a lot of people that it's up this high, and that is Star Trek Beyond. This, I love this movie. I know it gets some flack because it's got a Fast and Furious director doing it, and it's too actiony, yada yada yada. They're destroying the Enterprise again, like they did in the third Star Trek movie, Search for Spock. And but I still enjoy it. I still enjoyed it when I seen it in cinema. When I rewatched it for the first time, um, 2 years ago, I still enjoyed it. It's even if we, and I hope we never do get another movie in the Calvin movies, because it's been too damn long at this point. Let it rest. This would be a perfect swan song for that. We don't need a fourth film in the Calvin movies, in my opinion. Plus, it wouldn't be the same without Anton Yelchin, being Chekhov, because he got so much to do in this film, and I'm so happy about that. And that's why I was happy that Simon Pegg was a co-writer for this, because he mixed up the pairings. He gave us different pairings that we never seen in the original series with the cast and crew. Kirk with Chekhov. While we still had the Bones and Spock together, which was absolutely hilarious. Carl Urban and Zachary Quinto Dunn are phenomenal as Spock and McCoy. But yeah, my number 5 pick goes to Star Trek Beyond. So moving on to my number 4 pick, which is going to be The Voyage Home, the very first Star Trek film second Star Trek film I ever seen. I do love this film, and I know a lot of people now don't necessarily like it all that much, and I get it. It is dated. It is super dated, but it's still a fun movie for me. I can stick it on if I'm in a bad mood, and I'll have an absolute blast with it. So yeah, that's why I'm having it at my number four pick, and not going to talk too much about it because the my top three are the ones I'm going to talk about a good chunk about. You already, if you watch my channel at this point, I know I'm saying this about 17 minutes odd into this video. You know what my number one is, but then what's going to be my second and third pick? And I can tell you now, my third pick is The Search for Spock. So yeah, and the main reason this got bumped up actually huge amount because normally it's actually not, it wasn't even in my top 10 originally, but because of last year seeing it on the big screen, that's what made me fall in love with this movie. Seeing the Enterprise being destroyed in 4K on the big screen was amazing. The experience of just watching this movie on the big screen really sold it for me for the 40th anniversary, and that's why I have it so high up. And it's a good movie. It's a really good movie. We have Doc Brown before he was Doc Brown. We have it's an emotional payoff from the Wrath of Khan, and yeah, it's just a phenomenal movie. But it's not the best of the original series movies. So number two, you can probably already guess at this point, is going to go to the Wrath of Khan. Now, originally, I actually had this lower down on the list. So then, what made it go jump up to number two? And that is by reading the novelization. So, in case you don't know, I did post a review back in May where I read through the novelization of the Wrath of Khan, and it improved this movie for me. It made me fall in love with this movie. The amount of times I actually had to put the book down because we actually get to, in the movie we see the aftermath of Khan being on that, the space station where Genesis is and all that. But in the books, it goes through it. It goes through it. It shows him torturing these people, killing them, and because of that, I had to put the book down, and I loved it. I fell in love with this even more because of the novelization. So that is why the Wrath of Khan is at number two. So, to the surprise of absolutely no one, First Contact is my favorite Star Trek movie of all time. It is. It's amazing. It's beautifully shot, beautifully filmed. Credit to Jonathan Frakes. Yes, I do see the issues that people do have with it. I'm not going to lie, I do see it. I acknowledge them, but that doesn't deter my thoughts and feelings towards it. I love it. It's my favorite Star Trek film. It is the best Star Trek film ever made, and I will fight people on that. These hands are rated E for everyone. Everyone can fucking get it. But I do love this film. I know it's a lot of people's second or in the top five for a lot of people, and I get that. Art is subjective when it comes to a lot of this, but for me personally, First Contact is one of my favorite movies. I love it so much that I actually bought a VHS copy of it. I would, physically show it, but I'm not going to go down on the ground to go fish it out. There is a video of me unboxing it on the channel that you can go check out. But that is going to wrap it up. Let me know what you thought of this camcorder style setup where I'm using a mic for it. So yeah, let me know what you think of this for your bonus Wednesday upload, and I will see you all on Friday for when I'm going back to reviewing the Saga of Darren Shan. So I'll catch you all on the very next upload.